Hey guys, welcome back to Andrew Invests. Ever felt like, as a young person in the UK, that things are completely hopeless and they're not going to get any better? Well, you're not alone. Millennials are the first generation in history in the UK to earn less than their parents' generation in their 30s. So I think there's obviously a crisis. In my opinion, there are three main reasons why the whole system is rigged against young people and why it's not going to get any better. So in this video, I want to go through those, and without further ado, let's get right into it.
The wealthy world is aging fast. In 1950, around 1 in every 12 people in high-income countries was over 65. By 2050, it's expected to be more like 1 in 4. And it's storing up a big problem.
It is a feat that we can live longer and that we can enjoy being alive for longer, but it's expensive.
When people retire, they start to cost society more money, and the costs will soon be unsustainable.
Reason number one, demographics. The old saying goes, demographics are destiny, and it's pretty hard to deny that fact. The UK is facing a demographic crisis, as are many other rich countries, but in the UK it's particularly bad, with there being around 9 million people over the age of 65 10 years ago, whereas now there are over 11 million, an increase of 20%, and in 10 years time there'll be over 13 million, another 20% increase. Now, why is this a problem? Well, older people tend to not pay into the economy after they've retired, after all, whereas they do actually require more money to be spent on things like healthcare, pensions, and other subsidies for the elderly. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but somebody has to pay for it. The burden falls upon the ever-shrinking working age population in the UK, and it's only going to get worse as the population ages even further. Now, the tax burden in the UK is the highest since World War II already. So the fact that it's only going to get worse over time just goes to show how bad of a state the UK's finances are in. You might think that, okay, we're paying a bit more tax, but at least it guarantees that we'll have a healthy and wealthy retirement when we retire as well. Well, that's not the case. We are paying for elderly of the current day to have a better retirement than us when we retire in the future, and that doesn't seem fair. Take retirement age alone. Retirement age is set to increase by a significant amount over the coming decades, and I predict this is an underestimate of what will actually be needed, which means that young people today will have to retire at a much later age than the current elderly people. That doesn't seem fair when we're paying such high taxes. Now, this has led to protests in places like France, where you see people protesting the age of retirement being increased. And fair enough, but personally, I just don't think that it's even possible for the current retirement age to be maintained without it being increased with the current state of public finances. I won't even go that deep into the fact that because of the UK's aging population, the public services in the UK, such as dentistry, healthcare, are all declining, with emergency wait times being at all-time highs and the NHS being in a state of perpetual crisis. By the time we retire, we probably won't be able to afford a public healthcare system at all. So we're currently paying for the elderly to have it when we won't have it when we're old. So how does that make any sense, or how is that fair? Most people don't realize the dire state that young people are in and just assume that we'll have pensions and public healthcare when we retire as well. Speaking of pensions, not only is the number of people eligible to be paid a pension going up over time, but the actual amount of pension paid out to each of them is also increasing at a rate that's pretty much guaranteed to be above the growth of GDP. And that's all because of the triple lock. Now, what is the triple lock? So the triple lock is a guarantee by the Conservative government that causes the state pension to go up every year by the highest of either 2.5% average wage growth or inflation. And that's led to pensioners receiving a 10% income boost over the last year, whereas many public sector workers, including nurses, doctors, teachers, firefighters, they all received far less than that. That doesn't seem very fair to me. Now, many pensioners are living in poverty and they do need pension increases like this to stay healthy and stay alive. But the reality is that many pensioners are millionaires. 1 in 4 are millionaires, and many of them have more wealth than the average person who's working age and paying into the system. So why do they even need this money in the first place? Surely pensions should be means tested. But the reality is that right now we can just about afford to pay pensions, but as public finances continue to creak over the next few decades, we'll probably get to a point where pensions become means tested or limited, and we won't receive the pensions that we paid for people of our parents' generation to receive.
Dear young people,
don't vote.
don't vote.
Everything's fine the way it is.
Oh, you'll like some meme on Instagram.
If the weather is nice, maybe you could go to one of those little marches.
You might even share this video on Facebook.
But you won't vote.
You young people never do.
But I do. I do.
I do.
Reason number 2, democracy. Now, I know, hear me out. I'm not trying to say democracy is the worst system ever or anything like that at all. But it does have one weakness, in my opinion, and that's the tendency to ignore the long term and focus on the short term. Appeasing your core voter base in the short term lets politicians get re-elected, and why do they have to worry about the state of public finances in 30 years? It really doesn't matter to them at all. And this in particular has screwed over young people because 1, young people don't vote enough, and 2, young people as a voting bloc are extremely divided. Take the issue of triple lock pensions. This has led to no major political party in the UK supporting the abolition of the triple lock, even Labour. And that's because older people are such a large voting bloc that if you abolish this, there'd be no chance of you winning an election. Young people aren't even aware of how badly they're being screwed by the system to vote for a party that would abolish that. Believe it or not, there is another way that democracy has harmed young people, and that's when it comes to NIMBYs. NIMBYs are also a huge voting bloc in the UK, and they have prevented the building of so many houses. Take the Greenbelt. A 1 kilometre expansion in the diameter of the Greenbelt around London would provide room for hundreds of thousands of residents and homes. Now, it's never been done because there's such a large lobbying push for people to not want new houses built near them because it will lower the price of their house, which affects the country and young people as a whole, as housing has become so ridiculously expensive and so hard for young people to get onto the housing ladder.
Without productivity, a nation can only increase the goods and services consumed. If more people work or they work for more hours, it comes with higher wages, profits, and tax revenues. As Paul Krugman, the Nobel laureate in economics, once said, productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it is almost everything. Since the Second World War, productivity grew steadily. So by the mid-2000s, British workers produced as much 5 of their counterparts 100 years earlier. But productivity stopped growing around the time of the financial crisis of 2008 to 2009.
Reason number 3, economic growth. Now, the UK has really struggled to surpass its 2007 real household income, and it's absolutely insane. I remember hearing about this exact same thing 10 years ago and thinking, you know what, we will overtake that 2007 peak soon. It's been a big recession and it's only around the corner that we can look at better times. Now, here we are 10 years later in 2023 with all of the technological improvements, and we still haven't seen real household income improve since 2007 in reality. Now, you might think, what does it matter? The UK is already one of the richest countries in the world. It doesn't really matter that economic growth has stalled off because everything still seems to work fine, right? Well, the reality is that when you go to other countries that haven't had this same period of economic stagnation, such as the USA, the Netherlands, Sweden, Australia, Denmark, and many others, you can see there is a visible difference in the wealth of that country versus our own. The state of the public transport, the state of the kind of restaurants that people are eating at, how much money people have as disposable income. All of these things are quite noticeable when you live in a country for more than a few weeks. All of these three factors, with many others that I didn't mention, all point towards things only continuing to get worse, not better, for young people in the UK. And so I would only advise young people to leave the UK for better pastures if you are so inclined, because things are only going to get worse. Now, I realize that's quite a controversial opinion, but that is my genuine belief, and I am also hopefully going to try and leave the UK too. Now, if you did have any thoughts about what I said in this video, please drop me a comment and I'll try my best to reply. Also give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time.